Zuwaira, a quiet and humble woman living in Ikoyi, had always put her family first. She cooked, cleaned, raised the children, and supported her husband, Tund, through everything. She never asked for much, just love, respect, and peace at home. One evening, while serving drinks during a dinner party, she overheard laughter from the living room. Hidden behind the door, she paused when she heard Tund's voice. "She's just a housewife," he said, laughing with his friends. "No ambition, no real job, just sitting at home all day." The words pierced her heart like a knife. The same woman who held their home together, who never complained, who gave up her own dreams for the sake of their family, reduced to just a housewife. Her hands trembled, but she kept her face calm. She smiled politely and served them drinks like nothing happened. But something inside her had shifted. That night, while Tund slept soundly, Zuwaira sat in the dark with her notebook. She had been tracking everything for years: assets, bank accounts, business properties, secret deals. Tund never let her touch money or put her name on anything. But she wasn't stupid. She knew what was hers, and she had been preparing. That one sentence, "just a housewife," was the final spark. She knew she had stayed silent for too long. She wouldn't shout or fight. She would act. Not with noise, but with power, proof, and a plan. Her silence was over. Her story was just beginning. Zuwaira had always been the one holding the home together. She woke up before everyone, made breakfast, packed school bags, cleaned the house, and made sure everything ran smoothly. She remembered every bill, every doctor's appointment, every little detail that kept their family going. But even with all that, she had no say in the family's money. Tund handled everything: bank accounts, properties, businesses, and never allowed her name to be on any document. He would say things like, "You don't need to worry about money," or "just focus on the house and kids." At first she believed him. She thought he was protecting her. But with time, she realized he was controlling everything and leaving her with nothing. Still, Zuwaira never shouted, never argued. She smiled, nodded, and carried on like the perfect wife. But secretly, she had started watching, learning, and recording. She noticed how Tund would make late-night calls, bring in strange documents, and hide receipts. So she began writing things down: dates, account numbers, property names, even the names of the people he did business with. She quietly saved copies of emails, bank slips, land documents, anything she could find. She taught herself how to understand legal and financial terms by reading online, when everyone was asleep. Over the years, her notebook grew thicker. She didn't know exactly what she was preparing for, but something in her heart told her to keep going. She was no fool. She may not have had money or a job title, but she had eyes, ears, and a sharp mind. She waited patiently, never letting Tund know what she was doing. She knew he saw her as harmless, weak, even stupid. But that was his biggest mistake. Because while he lived carelessly, thinking he was untouchable, Zuwaira was building her case, piece by piece. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. And one day she knew, all this information would matter. One weekend, Tund packed his bags and told Zuwaira he was going to Ghana for business. He didn't know that Zuwaira already knew the truth. It wasn't a business trip. He was flying first class with his mistress, a young woman he had been spoiling with expensive gifts and money that rightfully belonged to their family. Zuwaira had seen the flight bookings, the hotel receipts, and even the private photos he carelessly left on his iPad. But instead of crying or confronting him, she quietly booked her own trip. While Tund was sipping champagne in Accra, Zuwaira arrived in Abuja with a thick file in her handbag. Inside it were years of documents, proof of hidden bank accounts, fake company names, fake invoices, secret property deals, and misuse of marital funds. Everything was neatly organized, with dates, names, and evidence. She walked into one of the best law firms in the city, and calmly placed the file on the lawyer's table. The lawyers flipped through the pages, shocked by how much she had gathered. They looked at her, amazed. "You've done most of the work already," one of them said. Zuwaira gave a small smile. "I'm just getting started," she replied. For years, Tund had made her feel small. He called her just a housewife, while hiding wealth and building an empire behind her back. But now she was ready. With the legal team on her side, a strong case of asset fraud and marital manipulation was being prepared. Tund had no idea that while he was enjoying his secret vacation, his world was beginning to shake. Zuwaira had been quiet for too long. Now she wasn't just his wife, she was his biggest threat. And she was done playing the role of the quiet one. Her next move would change everything. When the court papers finally arrived at their home, Tund picked them up with a laugh. He waved them in the air like a joke and tossed them on the table. "She's taking me to court?" he scoffed, not even bothering to read the full notice. For what? Being her husband. He called one of his friends on the phone and laughed even louder. "Zuwaira is wasting her time. She has no money, no power. I own everything." He didn't know that this was no ordinary court case. Behind that notice was months of legal preparation, and a well-organized legal team that had gone deep into his business records. Zuwaira's lawyers had already filed a formal request to freeze his accounts, review his assets, and expose every hidden transaction. Every deal he thought was secret, every shady payment, every undeclared offshore account was now under legal review. Bank statements, land documents, and company records were being pulled and analyzed by experts. Tund was still laughing when he told Zuwaira, "Go ahead and waste your time in court. You'll be back here begging me before long." She didn't answer. She just looked at him with calm eyes, knowing that the storm had already started behind the scenes. He had no idea that some of the banks had already responded, and investigators were looking closely at his portfolio. While he still saw her as the same silent housewife, the system was now watching him, carefully. The court date was set. The case was officially live. And Tund, full of pride and arrogance, had no clue that the walls were already closing in. The man who once laughed at her silence would soon face the voice of her truth. In court, in public, and in every headline. He thought she had no power. But Zuwaira wasn't fighting with words. She was fighting with facts. And that made all the difference. The courtroom was full of quiet tension that morning. Friends, family, lawyers, and even curious strangers had come to see what many called the housewife's case. Tund walked in with full confidence, dressed in a designer suit, phone in hand, and his usual smug smile. He had no fear in his eyes. In fact, he looked like a man ready to win. He threw a quick glance at Zuwaira, who was seated calmly at the front. She looked peaceful, almost too calm for someone who was about to face her husband in court. She wore a soft blue dress and held her hands together on her lap. Her eyes were focused, not on Tund, but on the judge's bench. The case began slowly, with lawyers speaking and documents being passed around. But then, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. A senior representative from the bank took the stand. He opened a folder and adjusted his glasses. Then, in a clear, firm voice he said, "Based on the evidence submitted and in accordance with marital property rights, all accounts linked to Mr. Tund Adebayo have been frozen under court order." The words dropped like thunder. The courtroom went completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Tund sat frozen, his mouth slightly open, unsure if he had heard correctly. He leaned toward his lawyer and whispered, "What does that mean?" The lawyer didn't answer. He had no words. The judge asked for clarification, and the bank official explained again. Every account under Mr. Adebayo's name, local and international, has been frozen until further review by the court. Tund's hands began to shake. He looked around, but no one met his eyes. The man who once laughed at Zuwaira, who called her useless and small, was now cornered by her quiet power. Zuwaira didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply nodded as if to say, "I warned you with my silence." That moment didn't just freeze his accounts. It froze his entire ego. A woman who was once invisible had become impossible to ignore. By the next morning, the entire country was talking. News of the court drama had spread like wildfire. On Twitter, Instagram, and even WhatsApp groups, one headline kept appearing. "Housewife freezes millionaire husband's assets." It was everywhere, on blogs, news platforms, radio shows, and even gossip pages. People couldn't believe it. A simple housewife from Ikoyi had pulled off something many only dream of. Videos from the courtroom leaked online, showing Tund's shocked face as the bank confirmed the freeze on all his accounts. The internet did not hold back. Memes flooded the timelines. One showed Tund trying to swipe his card at an ATM, only for it to say insufficient ego. Another had him with the caption, When you thought she was cooking stew, but she was cooking revenge. People laughed. Women cheered. Men argued in comment sections. Influencers posted messages like, "Never underestimate a quiet woman," and "Respect the unpaid work of wives." For once, Zuwaira's silence was louder than any speech. She didn't say a word publicly, but her actions did all the talking. Tund, who once boasted about being untouchable, couldn't step outside without feeling the weight of public shame. Clients started pulling out of deals. Friends avoided his calls. Even his family was embarrassed. Everywhere he went, people whispered. He wasn't just trending, he was being mocked. The man who laughed at his wife had now become the internet's favorite joke. Meanwhile, Zuwaira stayed quiet, letting the storm unfold. She didn't need to post anything. The world was already watching, and they had chosen their side. The same woman he once called just a housewife was now a symbol of strength. And as the laughter echoed across the country, one thing became clear. Tund's fall wasn't just legal, it was legendary. Just when everyone thought the drama had peaked, Zuwaira made her next move. Calmly, without any noise, she returned to court with a new file, thicker than the last. Inside it were documents no one expected. Proof of offshore accounts in Dubai and the UK, fake company names created to move money, and long lists of fake invoices. There were even receipts showing large transfers to a woman Tund had been secretly funding, his mistress. Bags, flights, rent, and even plastic surgery had been paid for using hidden funds. The courtroom was stunned. The lawyers flipped through the papers, their eyes wide. Everything was clear, organized, and backed by solid proof. Zuwaira had even included voice notes, screenshots, and email records. It was like watching a live movie. The judge ordered a full review, and within hours, the case had gone beyond just marital issues. It had now caught the attention of government officials. A letter was sent from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC), confirming that a formal investigation into Tund's business activities was now active. Tund's face turned pale as the judge read out the notice. His lawyer asked for a break, but it was too late. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. What started as a simple divorce case had now turned into something much bigger. People online started calling it the Housewife Files. News channels ran updates every hour. Tund, once respected in high society, was now a man under federal investigation. Through it all, Zuwaira remained quiet. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just kept submitting the truth, piece by piece. Her pain had become her power. And now, not only was she exposing her husband, she was forcing the whole system to pay attention. What Tund thought was a game had turned into a storm. And the woman he ignored for years was now leading the charge. The courtroom was quiet when the judge made the final announcement. After reviewing all the evidence, the court had decided to hand Zuwaira temporary control of Tund's company. Gasps filled the room. Even Tund looked like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. This was the same woman he never allowed to attend business meetings, never asked for advice, and never gave any credit. Now, she was the one sitting in the driver's seat of everything he had built. Using her silence, her loyalty, and her strength, Zuwaira didn't walk into the office like someone who came to take revenge. She walked in like someone ready to clean up a mess. The staff stood up when she entered. Some were nervous. Others were clearly impressed. She greeted everyone with a calm smile and asked for the latest reports. She sat in Tund's old chair, not with pride, but with purpose. She had studied his moves from a distance for years, and now, it was her turn to lead. Later that afternoon, she called the tech team. "Please update the website homepage," she said softly. "Just one sentence." They nodded and waited. She smiled gently and said, "Write this. Never underestimate a housewife." When the new banner went live, social media exploded again. Screenshots of the website went viral. Women reposted it with clapping emojis and hearts. Men couldn't stop talking about it. News outlets picked it up instantly. It wasn't just a sentence. It was a statement, a warning, a celebration. Zuwaira didn't need to shout to make her voice heard. That simple banner told the world everything. The woman once kept in the shadows was now shining at the top. And with just one sentence, she reminded everyone that strength doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it cooks your meals, raises your kids, stays silent through pain, and then rises like a queen when the moment comes. Tun never imagined this day would come. The man who once laughed at his wife in front of guests was now standing quietly in the reception of her lawyer's office, holding his phone tightly, waiting for a chance to see her. His eyes looked tired, his clothes no longer ironed perfectly, and his voice had lost all pride. He had tried everything, calls, texts, even asking mutual friends to speak to her. Nothing worked. He just wanted one chance to say sorry, to explain, to beg her to drop the case. "I've lost enough," he whispered during one short meeting. "Please, let's fix this. I can't take any more." But Zuwaira was no longer in the place he had left her. She wasn't crying in a room or waiting for someone to save her. She had already stepped into a new version of herself, stronger, wiser, and more focused. While Tund was busy looking for ways to stop the damage, Zuwaira was sitting at a large table in a Lagos boardroom, confidently sharing her vision with investors and NGO leaders. She spoke clearly, explaining her new mission: to build digital platforms that would help housewives learn about money, savings, investment, and independence. She talked about how too many women were kept in the dark about finances, just like she had been. And now, she wanted to make sure no woman had to feel powerless again. Everyone in the room was impressed. Investors leaned forward. NGO directors nodded. Zuwaira wasn't just a woman with a story, she was a woman with a solution. Tun's world was shrinking, but Zuwaira's was expanding. She didn't need to respond to his messages. Her actions had already spoken. The woman he tried to silence was now helping thousands find their voice. And while he was asking her to look back, she was already building the future, for herself, for her children, and for women everywhere who had ever been called just a housewife. Zuwaira had stayed silent for years, watching, learning, and growing in the background. But now, her silence had turned into strength. After everything she went through, being mocked, ignored, denied access to finances, and betrayed, she didn't let the pain destroy her. Instead, she used it as fuel. She took her story, her scars, and her quiet wisdom and turned them into something powerful. She officially launched an organization called Not Just a Housewife. The name alone shook the internet. It was bold, clear, and full of meaning. Her goal was simple but strong: to help women like her, housewives who had been kept in the shadows, learn about money, business, and self-worth. The platform offered free classes, financial tools, legal support, and real-life stories to inspire and uplift. Thousands of women signed up in the first week. Social media exploded with hashtags, support, and videos of women sharing how they, too, had been underestimated. What made it even more powerful was that she used the same company Tund once ruled to fund this mission. The same business that had pushed her out was now paying for her dream. She didn't just survive. She took over, transformed the pain, and built something meaningful from it. Tund's empire became her platform. His power, once used to control her, now became the bridge she used to free others. And Zuwaira, the woman once seen as just a housewife, had now become a symbol of change, strength, and silent victory. Her voice was calm, but her impact was loud. And she made sure every woman watching knew one thing for sure: never, ever doubt your own power.